So maybe before we begin, I'm just going to review some of the process that we're going to follow. By the way, I'm Joan Marin. I'm president of the NEF, and thank you all for participating. These virtual events are relatively new to us, and we're sort of learning as we go along, but we will be turning the mics off for all of the participants, except for those who are speaking when they're speaking. And at the end of the program, the formal program, we'll open up the mics again, and if other people want to speak or say something, we'll be free to do that. You can keep your video on, or you can turn it off, whichever works best for you. You can set up your video screen the way you like it. But just be aware, if you leave your video screen on, that we all can see the background, like Roy's aviary exhibition there. And if there's activity in the background, be aware of how it may impact the proceedings of our celebration. So that's really it. You're just going to all be muted during the formal part of our virtual presentation, our virtual celebration. So again, on behalf of the NEF Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you and thank you all for participating in this virtual celebration honoring Dr. Margaret McClure, or Maggie, as we all know and love her, and thanking her for establishing the NEF Dr. Margaret McClure Scholarship. So as you probably are all aware, the single-minded and focused mission of NEF is to raise funds and to distribute those funds in the form of scholarships to nurses who are pursuing master's and doctoral degrees in nursing. And Maggie has been a passionate supporter of this mission and of our efforts at NEF for many, many years. She's been on the board of directors. She was an officer of NEF and now is one of our distinguished members emeritus of the board. And this passion and commitment that she has demonstrated to the organization and to the mission of the organization is reflected in the fact that we already have raised $42,480 toward the Dr. Margaret McClure Scholarship.
Congratulations. Wonderful.
So Maggie claims, obviously, a long and accomplished career in service, in education, in research, as a number of her colleagues who will speak to that will attest to as the program moves along. But throughout all of her career, she has been passionately committed to improving and raising professional standards and promoting education for nursing leadership in all practice settings, regardless of where it is and what those leaders are responsible for. And NEF appreciates and thanks Dr. Margaret McClure for her tremendous contributions to our organization and to our profession. Our first speaker will be Claire Fagan, one of the grand dames of our nursing profession and a long-standing colleague and friend of Maggie's. So Claire.
Yes, Chair. Okay. Do I begin? Well, first of all, I have to say the first time I ever met her, I guess we fell in love. I don't know what else to say. I'd gone to Lehman College from NYU and I barely knew her. She barely knew me, but we just clicked immediately. And I think there are certain things that stood out right from the start with Maggie. One, she was a real believer in managing to link nursing education and nursing practice. And she felt very, very strongly about that in maybe slightly different ways from some of us at that time, but very strongly. And all of her work, including this, by the way, shows that linkage of education and practice. So that was one big thing. The other one is that she recognized where she was in this spectrum, and she wanted to find someone in education who would complement her with what we felt was our mission. And our mission, I went to Lehman in 69, and started the program there. And Maggie and I somehow latched on to the year 1985 and we started our own 2-woman campaign for baccalaureate by 85. We must have gone to every small town and small and large city in the state of New York. And we had legislators behind us, one of whom I met about 10 years ago before he died, who remembered us from that, although we didn't accomplish a damn thing. So what we accomplished was making a lasting friendship, and we got people aware of what it was all about. I think the 3/4 people we talked to didn't know what we were talking about. What are you talking about? What is this all about? Anyway, we convinced them of what it was all about. It was so, the thing that stands out for me for that major trip that we were taking, 2 things. One, that I adore her, as I've told you already 3 times. But the second is, I thought I was having a heart attack every town I went to, because sometimes we do 2 or 3 stops, like a campaign group, and I start getting these pains. And so when I first started thinking, what am I going to say about Maggie? I'm going to tell you that I was saying to her, continue, I think I'm having a heart attack. And she said, no, you're not. You're just exhausted. Well, of course, she was right and I was wrong. But at any rate, it sticks in my head, because considering that we both had full-time jobs, we worked our tails off to try to get this accomplished. And we didn't. So here we are in 2020. And I'm sorry to say, we've not accomplished it. We have it to some extent, but not the way we envisioned it. Nope, no way. Okay, so that's number 1. Then after that, shortly after, she went to NYU, but before she went to NYU, I wanted her at Penn. I knew she was from the University of Pennsylvania, and I felt we needed a director of nursing. I wanted Maggie. Unfortunately, there were family problems in her own family at that point, which made it impossible for her to come to Penn. So I would say, out of all my knowledge of Maggie, that was one of my big regrets, because I always wanted to work closer with her, and she felt the same about me. We kept looking for ways that we could work really close together, because we just finished each other's sentences. We were really good together. Now, I have a problem right now, is I don't recognize her. So I told her already, what is this new look? She's got to go back to the old look. She looks sensational with the old look. Anyway, whatever. This is my regular look, so we can't criticize the color if we like. If we like it, we don't. We don't. Okay, so then she went to NYU. That was a major turning point in her life, because not only did she go and do good things there, she was respected beyond anyone's imagination of what people could think of a CNO. And of course, not only was she respected, but Sol Farber, who was the head, respected nursing because of her. And if you ever met Sol at meetings or anything else, the first person she would want to see would be nurses. He was a loving, bright, wonderful man. And he adored Maggie, and he helped her on all her next steps. I'm talking too long, but the big next step, of course, is Magnet. And Maggie will go down in history because of Magnet. And partly, I think that was informed by her own work at NYU, which she made a treasure. An absolute, that's the only hospital I've ever used in all the years I lived in and out of New York, is NYU. And she made NYU a national treasure, or an international treasure, you might say, and was so loved and respected for it that it was quite unique. So when she turned to Magnet, she had history. She was not just coming out of the blue writing some new thing like we were about baccalaureate in 85. That was a little on the stretchy side, but she was not. She knew what she was talking about. She knew what she was doing. She had the very best colleagues in the world working with her on that. It's a star group, highest stardom in nursing. And that is an extraordinary legacy to leave. Now, that's about all I want to say, except that I think she's marvelous. I adore her. I think she's one of our great leaders. I'm so happy she's getting this honor. You have no idea. I wish we were together instead of virtual, but that's the way it is. So thank you very much for listening to my little stories. And Maggie, make your hair black again.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Bauer-Ferris, past president of our NEF Board of Directors, current board member, and also a long-standing friend and colleague of Maggie's. Susan worked with Maggie and succeeded her as the CNO at NYU Langone Medical Center. So Susan, please say your few words on behalf of Maggie.
Okay, thank you, Joan.
I'm not seeing Susan.
I know, I can't seem to get my video on. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have to probably close my computer down and start over again, knowing past experience with Zoom and Teams and any other virtual program I've been involved with for the last few months. Anyway, my history with Maggie goes back to, I won't even think, probably 40, 45 years, which is an awful long time. And we still are very, very close friends, if not colleagues in many things. I remember her in many ways, and I touch on 3 or 4 of the concepts that come to mind. Leader is clearly one. And when I was at Hospital for Special Surgery as a VP, and I think even before that, when I might have been able to attend deans and directors meetings of Greater New York, she was part of the leadership group there, including being president. So I remember her as a very strong leader in that group, and I thought, wow, she's something to follow. And I didn't even know where I was going to go following her at that time. But anyway, I did. And she became also the VP of Hospital Operations, which is essentially now Chief Operating Officer, which is an amazing feat. Not too many nurses achieved that in those days, if any. And now, of course, it's the way to go. One of the things I remember her as a leader saying, and it's true throughout many of her activities and what I remember and still have practiced, is whenever there's budget cuts coming and financial distress, there's always a propensity to start looking at the biggest department, which of course is nursing, and start cutting positions. Mm-hmm. And she always fought that and always said, regardless of where you're cutting in the hospital, it's going to affect the staff nurse. Correct. Because there's such implication for the work that's being done. So you cut a social worker, who picks it up? The nurse. You cut PCTs, who picks it up? The nurse. So on and on. That's been a very strong component of my thinking about leadership and organizational practice in nursing and in hospitals. I got to know Maggie a little better when we went to Atlanta. And I don't even know what year it was, but we were on a panel that reflected many things that ANA wanted to feature.
Are you able to get it done? I have to go back. They have to get.
And Maggie presented her project that was sponsored, I think, by United Hospital Fund, as mine was. Hers related to research in nursing, and it was a program that Jean Ake had fostered and Maggie supported. So that was an early kind of charismatic moment, I would say, in terms of having nurses present research as part of their practice environment. This was probably in the 80s, so it wasn't like there were that many projects going on that reflected this. And mine was related to use of the LPN with an RN partnership when I was at Presbyterian, which was also not very common at all. So that was an opportunity for me to get to know her a lot more personally, along with Diane McGivern and a couple other people. I'm not even sure who else was there. But always, Maggie has been a proponent of education, as Claire talked about. We all know about BSN and the BSN proposal in '85. She was very active in NYO&E when we decided to support the BSN in 10 initiative. And the key factor that she always used, aside from the fact that nursing needs an education in order to practice intelligently, is that the pipeline for faculty had to do with baccalaureate education and thereafter graduate work. So the pipeline is what NEF is really supporting. And that's a terrific legacy that comes forth. I think one of the other things I heard Claire reference regarding Dr. Farber was my meeting with him shortly after I arrived at NYU, or maybe it was when I was interviewing for the position that I went over to see him in the School of Medicine offices. And he said to me in his very prominent voice, as he was able to do, "Whatever you do, don't mess up nursing." Whatever you do, Susan, don't mess it up. As if I would, you know, but it was just such a strong statement from this man who was very, very near and dear to everybody who worked there at the time. And then I can't say enough about Maggie's leadership in the magnet recognition program. We know, of course, she was part of the research project that was published, and the one that was a follow-up to that that's been published. I can tell you that every single magnet conference that I go to, which has been every year since probably in the early 2000s, because of my own investment in the magnet program, we go around together, she and I, session to session, and we get stopped, I can't tell you, like every 10 feet by somebody who knows Maggie and wants to talk to Maggie. And it takes a long time to get from any place to the next place because Maggie's visiting and she knows she can speak to all of these various occasions, and it was just amazing. So she's just like the grandmother of the magnet program. I mean, everybody there knows her. The leadership there acknowledge her presence with the Magnet Prize, with a special notice that she gets at various things. And she's just the wonderful influencer and innovator and charismatic leader in these days as she was then, way back. So it's with great honor that I contribute my comments to Maggie's program today, because she's just a wonderful friend and person. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, very much. The next friend and colleague to comment on Maggie's professional and personal impact is Maria Vizina, who's Vice President and CNO at Mount Sinai Morningside, as you mentioned earlier. So Maria.
I'm going to have a little slightly different approach. Maggie is a living legend, of course, with an exceptional historic career in professional nursing. Everybody is speaking to that. But my first, I guess, knowledge of Maggie was as a very young nurse. I was in the graduate program at NYU for nursing education and an adult health minor, because you used to be able to do that in those days. So my very first teaching experience was at NYU, and I brought my students there, and they had assignments on the units, and at NYU Medical Center, as it was called then, decades ago. And so that's when I first heard of Dr. McClure as the CNO there. And I, of course, I was working then at New York Hospital, and, Eleanor Lambertson had probably just retired. So I had I was very young, but I started to hear about these very important leaders in nursing, coming to New York. That was an advantage from upstate. So I heard about Maggie then, and I remember looking around the unit and saying, boy, this place is just so organized. Everything is in its place. And, but I never dreamed then with those nursing students in those early years that I would ever meet the Maggie in person. who was responsible for this outstanding reputation of NYU. It never occurred to me. So I went on my little merry way, went to Lehman. And then after that, as faculty, and was introduced to amazing mentors there. I was very fortunate. Then I came back to Sinai. Rita, you hired me as my very first job at Sinai in the 80s. And then many years later, we had the infamous merger, with Mount Sinai Hospital and NYU Hospital Center or Medical Center. And that is my opportunity of when I got to know Maggie McClure. We were kind of thrust together in all these meetings about education, professional practice. And I was really drawn to her, direct and confident style. And I knew that this was a woman who was going to make all the best choices and would be influential in anything in her own charismatic way. So Maggie, you may not even known, but back then I was struck by your ability to just pull everybody together. You had that no nonsense leadership style, which I loved. You were logical to a fault, which is, no games. You had that sense of humor with that touch of sarcasm, which you couldn't wait to share. And really, NYU and its sense of professionalism and outstanding reputation continues on because of you. It continues on with Susan Bauer Ferris and Kim Glassman and now Deborah Albert, who I see is on the phone. But your sense of humor and your delightful way of calling a spade was really refreshing to me as a young nurse leader. I have to share that. And you love to share with me, off into the corner, the politics behind that fated merger. You got a real kick out of it. And you loved telling me those juicy stories. And I loved hearing it. And I think that was my first kind of bond with you, being from the other side, so to speak, of Mount Sinai, but we still found our common ground together. And then when I, was at Sinai, when we first applied for the Magna designation in 2004, with Tom Smith, and then 2 more times when I really got involved with how hard that work was, then I would step back and say I was just in amazement at your work on Magnet, your creativity and your scholarship, and how you really paved the way for a whole nother level of professional recognition. And really that's when I started to recognize you as the scholar that you are. So I never worked for you. I never had you as a faculty member. We did connect in our bond as both being graduates of Teachers College, Columbia University. There's many on this call that meet that requirement, and we have a bond from that experience, that education. But over the years, we would meet at many of the professional events and we'd sit together, whether it was the Academy of Nursing, ANA, AONE, NSNA. We would go to research days at Maimonides because Tom always invited you and me. We would meet up at Magnet conferences and sit together. And I always felt so privileged that you would want to sit with me and continue to tell me stories of things that I needed to know. Just in case I didn't know what really happened behind closed doors. And I just appreciated that. But I do have to add one more thing, and I know there's others on this call who are my mentors as well. But for me, a big moment, and Maddie, I know you're on the call as well. For me to get inducted into the Academy of Nursing was huge for me. It was a really definitive career dream that I had. And, Kim Glassman was one of my sponsors for the year that it did become successful. So I have to say, Kim would tell me that you were her sponsor. So she said, you're going to get the same treatment that I got from Maggie. We met every week. She was tough as nails. I mean, there were times where I would say to myself, I can't do this.
I think that's right in the front.
And Kim would just say, I got the best advice from Maggie, and now you're going to get it from me. So Maggie, you were my mentor in that process by what they call the 6 degrees of separation, and you didn't even know it. So I have to now let you know that story. So I'm kind of leaking out that truth and how you behind the scenes also made that dream come true for me. So I'm really honored today to pay tribute to an amazing individual who has continued to influence the success of so many, including myself. You have such clarity of purpose, you know, you don't mince words. You have an intensity of mission for nursing that is really at the highest respect. And to make nursing the best always, and that you have to work hard for it. It's not an easy job, and you never shied away from that hard work. And I think it is that hard work that is the only way to success, and not to skip steps. And so for that, that's my story for recognizing Maggie McClure in my life.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Our last speaker to honor Maggie this morning is Rebecca Hill, who's a PhD student at Boston College, and she is the first recipient of the Margaret McClure Scholarship.
Oh, wonderful.
2020. Now, Rebecca had planned to be here with us on Zoom, but just yesterday, I think, or the day before, her husband's hospitalization was extended. And she had planned it around his being home and her being able to participate, and that has not turned out to be true. However, she has prepared a video message for us, and this is for you, Maggie. So do we have that video? Is Gerard putting it on, Geraldine?
Says he's got it. Here it comes.
Good afternoon.
Oh, yes, I see her.
As the first recipient of the Margaret McClure Scholarship Award through Nurses Educational Funds. My name is Rebecca Hill. I'm a current PhD candidate at the Boston College William F. Connell School of Nursing. My research interests are around the identification of symptoms of problematic feeding in infants diagnosed with tongue tie. While it is a mild congenital anomaly, it can have significant implications on a successful feeding relationship and the formation of a positive bond between a mother and her newborn baby in the immediate postpartum period. And I know this through my personal experience with my 3 own children that were diagnosed with tongue tie. When I became knowledgeable about the anomaly and researched what was out there to date, what I saw was that the evidence was poor, the rigor of the research was low, and more needed to be done to support this mother-baby dyad that may be struggling to feed. So I pursued my studies as a PhD student, and here I am. To date in my tenure, I have published 5 manuscripts on the topic with another 2 currently, and my dissertation data collection phase will be completed in the next few weeks. Truly, this scholarship has allowed me to stay on track to graduate in May of 2021, providing funding specifically to secure childcare during a global pandemic, pay tuition in my 4th year of studies, and provide some financial support to the practice that I am collecting data in Albany, New York. I truly hope to advance the state of the science around this important topic and improve the care for the mother-infant dyad, decrease feeding difficulties in babies with tongue tie, and advance healthcare policy with the hope of eventual universal screening for this anomaly prior to postpartum discharge. Dr. McClure, I really, truly could not thank you enough for this scholarship award. I absolutely will pay this forward in my education endeavors, in my own practice as a nurse educator, teaching the future nurses, as a researcher for many years to come, and as a donor to Nurses Educational Funds. Thank you so very much for your support and for your confidence in me to become a scholar and a doctorally prepared nurse very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, isn't that wonderful? Oh,
It was fantastic. Fantastic.
gives me chills.
So, Maggie, now it's your turn.
Oh, wow. Oh, I have to tell you, this is a very exciting moment for me. I wish we were all together. It's the only thing that's wrong. I cannot tell you how happy I am. This is a terrific day, and the honoring me with the naming the scholarship is just so good. I guess I should say something about the speakers. You know, Claire Fagan and I were big troublemakers together. One of the things she didn't say about our 85 proposal was that the proposal was that by 1985, nurses preparing for the RN exam would have to come out of baccalaureate programs, and those preparing for the LPN exam would come out of the associate degree. Well, you see, she didn't mention the fact that the associate degree issue had been raised by me because I found in practice that those nurses were not what I considered to be professional nurses, and they weren't ready, etc. The education was up to what I thought they should have. And that was my own experience, you know, making rounds in my own hospital. And so I had, we cooked up this idea, and the two of us went around the state. We got this introduced through the New York State Nurses Association. But we actually had bullets, bird's eyes on our backs as we walked around because we weren't exactly popular with associate degree educators. Do I have to tell you that? But we protected each other pretty well, and we were a great team when we were doing our joint presentations trying to sell people. We might have failed in that effort, but we sure as heck had an awfully good time. And I think we did a lot to promote people's understanding of the importance of education for nurses. You know, it's a profession, and that people would not cotton to that. I used to say, you know, you have to have a baccalaureate degree to teach children how to read I See a Cat, and you don't have to have a baccalaureate degree in order to take care of the most severely ill patient under the most extraordinary circumstances. And it just doesn't make any sense. It's demeaning to nursing, and it wasn't working out for us. You can see we didn't get very far, but we had an awfully good time doing it. And I guess the compromise that's been made on the New York law has still not become law across this country. So my dream is still out there. It just shows you, you know, you can't always have success. You can just keep dreaming. But my own background I wanted to tell you about today because I thought you'd get a kick out of this. I am a graduate of the diploma school at then the Lankenau Hospital School of Nursing in Philadelphia. It was a very fine school of nursing, I have to tell you. Good reputation, and we turned out really good nurses. And I was one of them in the class of 57, back when they still struck stone to make fire. The interesting thing is that one of the first courses we had in our nursing education at Lankenau Hospital was taught by one of the sisters. Now, the background of the hospital was that it had been formed in the 19th century specifically to serve German immigrant patients, because all of those Pennsylvania Dutch people were really Germans, you know, and they only spoke German, most of them, and they would be taken care of in the hospitals in Philadelphia, where no one spoke German to them, and they were not getting good care. So the president of the hospital, whose name was John Lankenau, decided that he was going to send over to, he was going to create a hospital, actually, and he was going to send over to Kaiserswerth in Germany, where, by the way, you may recognize that from your Florence Nightingale background. He sent over to get a group of Lutheran sisters who would come to Philadelphia and start a school of nursing at the Lankenau Hospital to train good nurses who would speak German to these patients. Well, by the time I, of course, came along, Lankenau had moved outside the hospital, outside the city, to a beautiful suburb hospital. It was a gorgeous place. It had a great reputation. And I went there because my mother said, no, Margaret, you can't go to the University of Pennsylvania. They don't turn out good nurses. You have to go to a hospital school. I didn't find out until much later that we didn't have enough money for me to go to the University of Pennsylvania. It had nothing to do with what she thought. She was, by the way, a practicing nurse. In any case, our first course, one of my first courses was taught by Sister Amelia Schaefer, and she taught the history of nursing. And in the course of that course, she also taught about nurses' educational funds that had been started to support nurses to go on and advance their education beyond their basic. And that we should all, in fact, as a matter of course, throughout our career, we should all make contributions to nurses' educational funds because this was very worthwhile. that's the first introduction I ever had to this group. And I think that every time I ever got an envelope from them in the mail, I thought about Sister Amelia and immediately sent my check because I knew I'd go straight to hell if I didn't. Okay, so time marches on and many things happened, and I ended up at Teachers College, Columbia University, where many of you have graduated and where I have made the most fabulous set of colleagues in the world. And it made me grow and become. One of my really good colleagues was Louise Fitzpatrick. Many of you remember she was a board member for Nurses Educational Funds and a dear, dear friend. She finished up as the dean at Villanova University, as you may know. She, in fact, was the person who recruited me to be a member of the board of NEF because she was a member. And I am so grateful to her for that. It has been a long run. I've been a member of the board for many, many years, and I've always been happy to do it. I'm very proud of the work we have done. And the nice thing about this organization is it's very low key, but it's doing the most fabulous work possible. And it's just a wonderful thing to be connected with it. And now here we are in this wonderful year of the nurse. Where nursing and nurses, our colleagues, and the people who are still in practice are just facing the most awful challenges that we've ever known in this country. And they are stepping up to the plate. And nursing has always been admired and respected, but I think no more so than they are at the present time. I've always been proud to say I was a nurse, but now you say to somebody you're a nurse and they can't do enough for you. It's just terrific. And it's a great feeling. And we all have to be very happy that we've had something to do with bringing us this far, I think. So I am proud and honored to be part of the organization. And I'm very proud that this organization has continued to flourish in a very low key, and I might add, low expense way. We managed to give large amounts of money for scholarships with very low overhead, which means that the money that people donate actually goes to the charity that we have in mind, as opposed to some of the other charities that really spend a great deal of money. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here to celebrate this scholarship, which I'm humbled and pleased to receive. And I just hope that Sister Amelia Schaefer is someplace in heaven, finally thinking I might have turned out okay. She wasn't ever sure, by the way. So thank you again for being part of the celebration and for all your wonderful friendships over all these years.
Thank you, Maggie. So that concludes the formal part of our celebration. Thank you all for participating. Thank you, Maggie, for those wonderful words. I'm just wondering, in the last few minutes, does anyone else have anything that they want to add? Any memory, any comment? Yes, Geraldine.
I just wanted to say that this event will be up on YouTube.
You beat me to it. Yeah.
So that you can look and see everybody who attended, and you can hear each other's talks, and other people can come to our website and be directed to see this entire celebration.
So Joan, are we unmuted?
Yep.
No, we can hear you.
I
Hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations to Maggie and throw back the memory of my first working with her, which, as most of you can imagine, was through NYSNA. And while I was on my way to NYU, in and out of other places before I got there, that's how I knew your work best. And that's where I came to appreciate so much your support of ideologies and efforts that we made to move just what you said, the educational agenda for nurses that was so important and so much a part of many of the things we did in that group. And I've always appreciated that, Maggie, as well as enjoying running into you in so many places, including places like Sardi's, as well as the Academy and all of our other gatherings. So it's always a pleasure. Your brightness in our lives, and you've provided a great deal of luminescence through your leadership in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to say a couple of quick words. Maggie and I didn't have any of the ties you're talking about. I think mostly it started with deans and directors when I was representing June Rothberg initially in that whole group. And that was kind of our first meeting. And then I was, as you know, a member of the board. So we had a lot of time together then. And I just wanted to share something that you and Claire were talking about. I graduated nursing school in 1965 with a diploma. And right after I graduated, I started back to get my baccalaureate. And one of the first classes I got, we were taught about the 1985 amendment. And so I learned about it very early and got on the bandwagon, of course, because it was just such an important piece of work, whether it made it or not. I think one of the critical things for me is that it brought me kind of into a fold and the philosophy and a real connection with nursing that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So even though it didn't succeed as legislation, it succeeded, I think, in rallying nurses and helping us to move forward in our own careers. And I appreciate that very much. And then the last little bit is in publishing the book from Springer, the Encyclopedia of Nursing Leadership. Maggie was helpful. She was an integral part of putting that together as one of the co-editors. So thank you. And one last little bit is that in terms of meeting her in all kinds of places, we bumped into each other in the street, heading to our respective commencements a year ago, May. So you never know where you're going to bump into people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Joan?
Thank you very much.
And Joan, I wanted to say on behalf of the American Academy of Nursing, since I have that privilege and honor to be president, to congratulate Maggie on this honor and NEF on honoring her. So that's my formal acknowledgement, as Maggie has been a past president and a major member, and of course all of the work related to Magnet, which we just celebrated through Linda Aiken being named as a living legend this year, and who applauded Maggie and her work with Magnet through her remarks as well. So it's a banner year for you in some ways, additionally, Maggie, to see all of the growth there. So, and thank you for all of your support. You know, one of the things that Maggie's so good at, everyone says, she speaks her mind and says exactly what needs to be said, but you also have a great generosity and understanding of issues. And so you're also very supportive of people at the same time. Both you and Claire have that ability. And so I can see why you became fast friends immediately. So again, congratulations, Maggie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your leadership. It's been wonderful.
I just have a couple of comments to make very quickly. Maggie, this is so wonderful and such a wonderful honor. The first time I met Maggie, I think really, though obviously I was fully aware of her work, was when I first came to NYU. And I went over to the medical center and we were waiting downstairs for the elevators, and the elevators didn't come and the elevators didn't come. And I said, Maggie, your elevators are terrible. And you said, I don't do elevators. But I think that's the only thing you didn't do, Maggie, was the elevators. And my other experience with you was when we would sit in some meetings together, and Eileen talked about your generosity. And that's one of the things I really remember, is your generosity with people, with young people. But the generosity I remember with you, Maggie, was I would sit near you and people would get up to speak with titles. And I was like blindsided. What is that nurse's title? And you would give me a shoulder and you'd say, old head nurse, old supervisor, for all of the titles of the people. But it's your linkage, the education and practice that I think is the cornerstone of your career. to understand truthfully, which a lot of people in nursing didn't fully understand, that one needs to move forward lockstep with the other. And you exemplified that throughout your career. So just bravo. What a wonderful, wonderful tribute to you.
Thanks, Maddie. Janine, did
Hi.
you want anything?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So first of all, congratulations. It's so good to see you as always. I was one of your obviously staff nurse for many of you who don't know me back in 1979, I guess it was. And I recall the first time I came on the floors, and I remember the responsiveness from all these, high-powered surgeons who always had a voice, and Dr. McClure would come on the floors, and there was just like this amazing silence, respect. When she spoke, it was like everyone listened, including these surgeons. And of course, she always gave us as the nurse, the bedside nurse, the opportunity to speak if there was a question. So I know back then I felt like we were in a magnet hospital, but it wasn't defined as magnet back then. But we certainly felt the philosophy that nurses were empowered. You gave us a voice. And because of that, I remember you formulated my career. I wanted to be a chief nurse, and I wanted to be just like you. Now, sometimes, for me professionally, it was just wonderful to have you as a role model, and to see and have a vision as how you can, move your career in a different place, and really bring education and practice together, and have a voice, and just make a difference in our profession. And I want to thank you for everything you've done for us over the years. And it's been a pleasure always catching up to you in different venues. And I just have to say, you're like one of the most amazing people I know. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything. And you deserve this award and so much more. So thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for all the heartfelt thoughts and accolades for Maggie. And Maggie, thank you again. As Janine said, you deserve this and so much more. And for your tremendous contributions to our profession and also to our organization. So again, I want to thank everyone for being with us and for participating in this event. I think it went pretty well, considering, as many said, it would be far preferable to be together and be able to hug and laugh and have a drink,
and have
whatever.
lunch.
But
and have lunch.
have some food, right? But we'll have to defer that until next year. So again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Stay well.
Stay well. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
We just updated our phones, and it's like the update is just so.
I haven't.